what's going on in the county and really how we got to where we are today and then how you can help us. But let me, and the slide's going to go over, some of the basics of the county. We're almost 1 million people. We're the second largest jurisdiction in the state of Maryland. We're 500 square miles, and that is a real 500 square miles. We're urban, suburban, rural. We're close to the nation's capital, which my good friend Wayne Curry always refers to as Rome. And I always add on, it's the only place that you can legally print money. 15 significant federal enclaves, major universities, including Bowie State University, College Park, Prince George's Community College, University of Maryland College System, an educated workforce, a diverse workforce, 15 metro stops, AAA bond rating. 25% of the federal workforce live in Prince George's County. 60% of our residents have jobs. 60% of our residents who have jobs commute out of the county for work. Next slide. I can hardly read it. Can you read that? Yeah. That's who we are. So why are you here? First of all, let me do this, and I'll try and be brief. We want to thank you for actually bringing everyone together here and for you being with us this morning and helping us, I think, play a role, because many of the questions that you asked about Prince George's County, what's going on? Why aren't our nonprofit sectors either applying for grants or getting grants? What is the future of the county? What are the long-term goals? What you get is a snapshot of who we are in terms of our relationship to the state of Maryland. We're the second largest jurisdiction. We're a highly educated workforce. We're very diverse. But when you look at what people said about Prince George's County, especially when I was in the legislature, it was all of these things. When I came out of law school, let me just start. When I came out of law school, my wife and I were looking for a place to live. What she wanted and what I wanted were two different things. I wanted to be in a place where, our kids would go to great schools and where everybody there is highly educated. What she wanted was a diverse population for our kids to learn, not only racially diverse, but economically diverse. She wanted them to be well-rounded children. And that's why we chose Prince George's County, because it is suburban, urban, and rural. It had everything that we wanted for our kids. The puzzling part for me was, especially coming out of the nonprofit sector in D.C., was why was so few nonprofits in Prince George's County growing to the capacity that you would see around the region? Why was the focus not on what we're doing here in the second largest jurisdiction, the most diverse in terms of economics in the state, the same way you'd see the state focus on Baltimore City? And so for us, it was like, what are these questions? What's going on? And then the puzzling question for me was, why in a county that's so educated was our school system second from the bottom? And our crime at the time was second from the top. And so I started on a quest to run for county executive. At the time, I did not know it would take me 8 years. I don't know if I'd have started on it had I known it was going to take that long. But if you bear with me just for a second, so I start on this 8-year quest, and I finally become county executive. So as you can imagine, it's the happiest day of my life. I've put 8 years of my family's life, my good friends' life, seeking this office, and I can't wait to take it over. So typical Rashurin Baker style of taking over government is you get it in the worst possible way. So anybody who can remember back to those, what seems like a long time, first taking over, being actually winning the primary, there were ethical challenges, to say the least, that faced us before we even took office. So it meant that when we came into office, we literally had to get rid of everyone in a decision-making position in the Prince George's County government, because we didn't know there was an ongoing FBI investigation. So therefore, we did not know what was going to happen in terms of that investigation. So it meant we had a brand new county executive who had never run anything larger than his nonprofit of 7 people. You had all acting directors, an acting CAO, an acting police chief, an acting fire chief, an acting corrections director. Washington Post used to joke that I was acting as county executive. Then you had a very nervous Wall Street because they weren't sure that the investigation had to do with money that was federally tied together. So they said, well, we need to see this new guy because, one, we don't know that he has the experience to run such a large jurisdiction. And quite honestly, we don't know what he'd do with the money that he has. And so you had Wall Street nervous, you had the General Assembly nervous, and you had me nervous, and I couldn't sleep at night. And to make matters worse, we had 14 homicides in 14 days, which the chief of police and I always debate on. He said it was 12. I say it's 14. But you had what seemed like a catastrophe coming at once in Prince George's County. Worried about finances, worried about education, worried about security, worried about conditions. And then to make matters better or worse is we had an earthquake, a 100-year flood, snowmageddon. We had every crisis you could get. I used to joke and say, you know, in the first couple of months, I used to say, well, I'm not sure if Job and Noah, but I'm ready to go back to Massachusetts where I'm from. And I used to go around and say that Prince George's County during those early days is the economic engine of the Washington region. And at that time, my colleagues would very kindly applaud, and they think I was so nice and sweet, and they like the little guy up there, you know, he really cares. But they were like, oh my God, he's been dealt a bad hand. And so he used to applaud nicely for me and just say, I hope he just gets through the first 4 years. And so everything looked like it was down. But what we did in Prince George's County, and really the reason that you're here today and the reason that we think this is the greatest place for you to invest in and help us, is we turned that into opportunity. We looked at the sides of Prince George's County where the negatives, and then we looked at the positives. So the first thing we did was public safety, since that was the most visible impediment to investing in Prince George's County. For the first months after those homicides, we would meet every Monday, the chief of police, the state's attorney, the sheriff, the senior staff of the county, and we would meet around crime, not just what's going on with investigating those crimes, but how do we anticipate and how do we look at and make sure we're ahead of the curve in preventing crimes from happening. And out of that work over the last 2 years, last year, Prince George's County had the lowest drop in homicides, I would dare say, in the nation. Our drop was 33%. To put that in perspective, every place else in the United States dropped in single digits. So 8%, 7%. Ours 33%. So we were doing something right in terms of public safety. The next thing was economic development. Certainly people felt like they were, you know, was this a good place to invest in? And if it was a good place to invest in, why didn't the county invest this money into the jurisdiction? And so we decided to change that. One of the first pieces of legislation we pushed through the council with their help was to set up our EDI fund. And that is, in a bad economy, when everybody else is going right, we actually went left. We actually took $50 million of our reserve funds and we used it to invest in the economy. We said we believe that much in Prince George's County that we want to have something, the highest fund in the region, excuse me, outside of the state of Maryland, to invest in the economy, because we know it's going to take off. So we invest in the economy. Second thing was healthcare. I believe healthcare is the third most important issue facing us in Prince George's County. There's public safety, education, but then there's healthcare. Healthcare and access to quality healthcare has an impact on both our public safety, and our education. If we drill deep, you'll see some of the problems that we face really have to do around people's mental state, people's physical state, and so healthcare is important. For 20 years, thereabout, we have been arguing over whether, in fact, or what to do with Prince George's Hospital and dimensions, and how do we make sure that it is, thank you, how do we make sure that we come up with a permanent solution to the situation in the hospital? And so one of the first things I asked Brad Seaman to do when I won the primary was to start working on that issue. Because I knew if I didn't, around this time, the Post would start writing articles about how I promised I would do something about health care, and I didn't. But he started working on the issue and looking for solutions and working with the council. And about 2 weeks ago, we announced not that we're building a hospital in Prince George's County, but a regional medical center that will not only provide quality health care and access to health care, but will coordinate how we do health care and issue health care throughout Prince George's County and the southern part of the state of Maryland. And will also spur economic development. And we did it in we're going to do it in a transit location, right on one of those 15 metro stations that we always talk about in Prince George's County that are underdeveloped. And so we're going to have this great facility that's going to spur economic development. So we've dealt with public safety, economic development, health care. And the leg that was standing, I should also say, one of the first things, and was not very popular we did, was we dealt with the elephant in the room. And that was ethics. Almost nobody coming into office wanted to talk about ethical reforms in the county. One, because they said, well, everybody who's connected to what happened in the county, all the bad stuff, they're gone. We knew. We didn't do anything wrong. But the perception out there was that Prince George's County had this cloud over it. And the only way to move that cloud was to deal with it head on. And we did. We passed through one of the strongest ethical pieces of legislation that was self-promoted. As a legislator, I can tell you, most jurisdictions don't self-regulate. We did that. That was different. And we got the council to go along. And so now we have a new ethics office, and we strengthened the hands of the state's attorney to look in violations so people can feel good about the stewardship of their money. We also started our county stat, so we look at how government is efficient and how they're using funds. We have our 311 system, so people can, in our county click, so if you see something wrong, you can not only tell us about it, but you can track it. All of these things go to greater transparency and greater accountability. And so we started dealing with everything that was there, that was facing us when I came in. And then the next big thing was education. And as anyone who's dealt with education, not only in Prince George's County, but in the state of Maryland, probably is aware that the county executive, not just myself, but any county executive and the mayor, our responsibility around education is simply to fund it. We give them $1.7 billion. And at that point, once we funded, and we did it in the first 2 years of this administration, we exceeded what is called the maintenance of effort. Once we funded them at the level that they requested and exceeded it, quite honestly, our dealing with education was done. I could honestly run on a platform that says, I fully funded education, I care about it. Doesn't mean our education of our children improved one bit. Doesn't mean we played a role in education, but I funded it. So since I have 5 minutes left, I'm going to put a pin in that, in the education, and go and skip to something else. Since our role in education was just to fund it, we moved on to how we can improve the quality of neighborhoods that Brad's going to talk about in a minute, what we call our Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative. That initiative really came about when we started looking at how we were able to reduce our crime in the county. Because what the police did was they looked at 5 locations in the county where we saw the highest indicators of crime. And they focused on those by targeting resources, manpower, without ignoring the other areas, but they heightened the awareness in those 5 areas. And every one of the 5 areas we saw crime drop. So in a meeting, I said to Brad Seaman, why can't the rest of my government respond the way that the police department did? And he'll tell you it was my idea, and I'll tell you that really wasn't. That was the conversation. I just said I want the rest of the government to respond the way the police department did. From that became something people said couldn't be done, and that is to get the entire government into a room, and talk about our missions, principles, and statements, and how we get them to respond better. What also came out of that was, how do we target, if there are 5 areas where we see crime indicators going up, there's also probably areas that we see where all of the bad stuff is going up. So dropout rates, lack of job opportunities, you name it, we looked at these areas. So from all this work and numbers came 6 areas in the county where all the indicators were going in the wrong direction. It just so happened those 6 areas either abut a metro station or quite near a metro station and are right next to the district line, which means they have great opportunity. I have 2 minutes left. This is how this government's really run. Right next to the district line. And so we started working on programs to bring the quality of life into those neighborhoods up. So we started focusing education, public safety, healthcare, public safety, our transportation, job opportunities in those 6 areas, and to see if we could start changing some of the numbers there. And it worked. We started to see improvement. Now I jump back in my minute to talk about education. We controlled everything in those 6 areas but education. Our philosophy was to take the limited resources that we have and target it on the places where we could get the greatest bang for our buck, in terms of, if nonprofits came to us and said, we want to help the county, we said, great, we want you to help us. But if you've got a program in one of these 6 areas, that's where we're going first. If the state said, we want to help with crime, we said, great, we want you to help us with crime, but these are the areas that we want you to help us in. If the private sector said, we want to do development, we said, great, we want to work with you. If you're going in these areas, that's where we're going to look first. The only place we couldn't do it was education. And the reputation of any county, cities are different, but any county is based on its public education system. Fairfax, Montgomery County, Howard County are all considered great, not because of economic development, because they're considered to have great public schools. So if we were going to change the dynamics of Prince George's County and get people to invest their time and money, then we needed to get control of education. And by a very unanimous bill that I introduced and everybody loved, so we quickly passed it through the General Assembly, and no negative things came of me. We are where we are today. So why are you here as I close up? Because we do have control of health, economic development, public safety, transportation, and yes, education. And how do we change the quality of life in Prince George's County? There are 6 areas in this county. If we change the dynamics of those 6 areas in this very large county, then the reputation and quality of the county will take off. So you're here for us to talk about how you help us do that, because you can't do it by government alone. The idea of our investing in transforming neighborhoods was never to say the government would do this. It would say we would do it in partnership. The best way, and Brad does a better job of talking about T&I than I do, but the easiest way for me, because I'm not that bright, so the easiest way for me to describe it to people is, they always talk about Jeffrey Canada and the Harlem Children's Zone, right? And I said, everybody talks about how great that is. That is doing T&I with solely private funding. So imagine what would happen if you took private dollars and public dollars and the control that the government has at its hand, and you target it in these neighborhoods. You said, I'm going to change what happens in Suitland and Coral Hills because I'm going to go to every facet of government and the private sector and the nonprofit sector who are doing it, but maybe not to scale. So how do we scale them up? You do that, you become the model not just for the state of Maryland, but for the nation on how we deliver services from the government, the private sector, working together, the nonprofit, philanthropy. That is really what it's about. And so let me close with this as I turn it over to Brad Seaman. I was looking at the slides they gave me this morning, and I have to tell you, when you see the slides, if someone actually did it right, I was thinking they're like, man, whoever did this is a bad person. I mean, they are really the stuff. And I thought about it, I said, this is our government. And I get the pleasure of working with these very bright individuals in doing this. And for me, for someone who wanted to go into public service, simply so I could give people the opportunity that because I was blessed with the parents I had, to see it actually come to life. And to know that if we work together on it, that we're building something not for the time that Rashawn Baker is county executive, but for all times. Thank you, Brad Seaman.